Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Lorna. I Feel the Everblack Festering Within Me, out September 12th on Century Media Records. The album has 10 tracks, 67 minutes in length, and this is the band's 5th full-length studio album. They are an American deathcore band. I just want to start off by saying that this is the band's longest record, 67 minutes. They've been getting longer and longer with every release, specifically when you talk about Pain Remains and this one, both albums being over the 1 hour mark. If you watch a lot of my reviews, you know that I'm not necessarily a huge fan of albums going over the 45-minute mark. I think it becomes quite dicey, especially when the band is as heavy, as brutal as Lorna Shore is. It becomes a little bit more difficult to keep the attention of the listener for an album of this length with this kind of brutality and sound. I also feel like at times it dilutes a little bit of that same brutality. It becomes a lot harder to tell the forest from the trees. With Pain Remains, it worked really well because of the trilogy that closes off the album, so that allows the album to be over that 1 hour mark without necessarily losing anything as far as the overall album experience is all about. And this one is no different. Not because there's a trilogy that closes off the record, that's not the case here. But I feel like this album, from a design and structure standpoint, is even better, more mature than Pain Remains. Pain Remains with that trilogy really closes off things. But if there's no trilogy to close off the album, how do you do it? Now, you don't just have to look at the bottom end of the record, you have to look at the beginning, middle, and how do we put it all together for the album to be as dynamic, as fluid, as engaging as possible. I felt like they did a wonderful job with this record. It's an album that when you're listening to it, you dive deeper and deeper and deeper into it the more you listen to the album and with each and every passing song. The album also has the ability to give you the right track at the right time for the needs that you have as a listener. You're listening to this album and there's a sense of brutality in one song. You then perhaps need something equally as brutal because you want to continue in that same vibe. But then after 2 or 3, you need something a little bit more calmer, something a little bit more melancholic, and that's exactly what the album offers. So the track listing on this record does an amazing job, not just painting the picture of what the overall journey and what this overall album is all about, but also of the individual songs. Individual songs that, for me, listening to a lot of the singles, I didn't connect with those songs as much as I did when I listened to the album. This record showcases the individual tracks in a much different light than listening to them outside of the context of the album. I actually feel like this is a record designed more for the overall album experience than it is for the singles, more so than any of the record that the band has released to date. So it's a great design, really putting together what an overall album feel should be like without having perhaps the crutch of having a trilogy closing off the record. As far as sound is concerned, this album has 3 main pillars. 3 main pillars that really really give you a full idea of what this album's potential, sound, and experience, vibe, atmosphere is all about. First of all, I gotta say that it's an album that breaks the mold as far as deathcore is concerned on certain fronts. Not on every single front, but on certain fronts. And I think that's an important aspect for any band looking at evolving, growing, is to not create the same record twice. While the sound on this album is not that far off from Pain Remains, this album showcases differences, nuances that Pain Remains didn't, which allows this album to move them forward without necessarily disconnecting from the recent past. And I think that's a winning formula for any band. You want to move forward, but you don't want those steps to be so far apart from one another that you kind of lose your footing. They're not losing their footing with this record. Now, the 3 main pillars of this album from a sonic perspective are, without a shadow of a doubt, the fact that not every song has a breakdown. This album definitely has a different orchestral side to it that has a different impact on these songs, and it also has outstanding guitar solos. These 3 things to me play an important role, a defining role in what the overall sound of the album is all about. Starting with the breakdowns, I'm not a fan of every single song having to have a massive breakdown. I'm just not. I feel like the breakdown is important, if it fits the song, if it fits the mood of the song, if it fits the overall flow of the song. I'm not necessarily a fan of having a breakdown for the sake of having a heavy breakdown and allowing that breakdown to kill the fluidity of the track. It just doesn't seem needed. And I felt that at times, specifically with Pain Remains, there were breakdowns on that record because they felt like they needed to have a breakdown in order for the song to be heavy, in order for the song to hit home, in order for the DNA of the band to stay consistent. On this album, they took a few gambles and they decided to go with some more direct approaches on certain tracks, changing the moods of the songs, allowing up for a more melancholic approach to creep in. And in tracks that have that sort of experience, you can totally live without having a breakdown in it. It allows the fluidity to be uninterrupted, it allows the mood of the song to be more consistent, and it allows the tracks to be more direct. In an album that has a lot of weird and strange paths, songs with a lot of built-in chaos into them, songs that go over the 7-minute mark, having some shorter tracks with no breakdowns, having some more direct approaches, I feel it creates a much better overall balance for a record experience. When you get into the other aspect of this album, which is the orchestral side of the record, this album offers even more of a cinematic orchestral side than any of the previous records, specifically Pain Remains, which had a very cinematic approach as far as orchestrations are concerned. On this record, they're not just adding a more cinematic theatrical orchestration integration into the song, they're also adding choirs and backing vocals that add to that overall cinematic experience. When you have real super brutal tracks, adding those elements in there, it's a perfect element to create the right atmosphere and to emphasize what the mood of the song is all about. It also allows the tracks to have more of a fluidity to them, and that's exactly what you're going to find on this album. An album that I found overall to be quite dark, even though it has a lot of songs that offer a lot of brightness in them. But when you have those orchestral pieces, when you have those choirs built into the tapestry of the tracks, you're able to create both. You're able to create a more open and bright sound with more hopeful nature to it, but at the same time, the DNA of that orchestral piece mixed in with the heaviness of the songs offer an overall dark and somber experience. This dynamic is better suited for this record and is better delivered on this album. Last piece, guitar solos. For a deathcore band, for a deathcore album with this kind of sound, this record really sets the tone. That is not just about breakdowns. You can have them, obviously, you need them at times, but it's also about the guitar solos. Outstanding guitar solos on this record, outstanding guitar work on this album, allowing it to be a little bit more multifaceted, not as linear, not as one-dimensional as it's been in previous records. You're gonna find a lot of guitar work on this record in different perspectives, in different parallel worlds, creating heaviness, adding to the overall brutality of the drum sound, which is a very heavy drum sound throughout. A lot of blast beats for all of you out there that enjoy that. This record has more than you can shake a stick added. And then you have the guitars also breaking away from that sound while still there, offering a different perspective with a more melodic, melancholic standpoint that really penetrates deeper into the tracks. Some songs even with some black metal elements in it, creating a little bit more of a narrow experience. But then once you get into the solos, the tracks really blossom, and I felt like the solos on this record are really outstanding. There's not a single bad solo on this album. This album may have, in my opinion, sometimes too many breakdowns, but it does not have too many solos. Great performance guitar-wise, really completing the album around. Outside of the sound and these three main pillars, you have Will's vocals, which on this record are as consistent as they have ever been. I don't think you're ever going to get a bad performance from him. This album is no different. He just Will doing Will, and this record is just that. There's really not much more to say. He does what he does best. I feel like a lot of the lyrics on this record, while Pain Remains perhaps was a very personal album when you look at the lyrical content, or at least it could be viewed from that perspective, I think this album digs a little bit deeper from that standpoint with some really interesting introspective tracks like Glenwood, for example, I think that's a perfect example of a song that has a very introspective nature. Now, as far as how all of this works together, it really works in a way that allows him to exploit all of his range, all of his delivery, all of his abilities, completing the songs in a very natural way. He's really become the voice of Lorna Shore, and the sound of Lorna Shore has given him the right platform for him to push himself to the limits. This album is definitely one of those albums where you really see him going into the limits. There are certain songs that feel so organic that it almost like he's losing his voice at the end of the vocal delivery, and I thought that was so natural, so unpolished. We didn't see that in Pain Remains from him. We see that on his record. This record offering that more that more raw side of him, even in the emotion that he carries in his delivery and how he finishes that delivery. Pay attention to this album. You're going to find a lot of times throughout the record him almost like losing it or cracking the voice at the end. I thought that was really cool, keeping those moments in there. Like I said, feeling very unpolished, very raw, giving this album a little bit of its own DNA, a little bit of its own fingerprint. And while it's perhaps very difficult to follow up Pain Remains, I think they did a wonderful job with this record. This is an album that feels more mature, feels more put together. The perfect continuation, the perfect follow-up, if you will, is not going to disappoint any of the fans. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I'm going to start off with In Darkness. Incredibly cinematic, orchestral, symphonic piece to start off. And I thought they were going to start off like that and then they were going to kill it. And it was going to come down to the heaviness, maybe bring some of that orchestral elements here and there, but not too much of it. It's not the case. This orchestral piece, while starting off the track, it doesn't completely get dissipated from the song. It moves a little bit more into a layer, and then it comes a little bit more back up again. And it has not just orchestral pieces, but it has vocal choirs built in with the orchestral pieces. Both elements start at the top, they move a little bit more to the bottom, but they creep up every so often. This allows the track to have a very nice integral portion of the song become the red line that connects the whole track from beginning to end. And then you're just packing heaviness, you're just packing breakdowns, you're just packing all sorts of different things on it. But this is your backbone, and this is your main structure, your main highway in which the song then navigates, and in which the listener finds his path and finds his own journey. It's a super rich sounding song, not just because of this construction and this approach to the orchestral side and to the choirs, but overall the track is very rich in the guitar sound and what it offers. It has a massive chorus, really balancing well the overall brutality of the track with the more melodic side of the track. And like I said, it's a very rich song because it's also very rich guitar-wise. Insane solo on this track to just really emphasize how rich this song is from a guitar sound standpoint. Then we have Glenwood. Glenwood, I would call this the ballad of the record. Now, it's not a ballad, but by Lorna Shore's standards, this is as much of a ballad as you're ever going to get from any deathcore band, specifically Lorna Shore. It has a little bit more of an introspective feel and look as far as the lyrics are concerned. It has no breakdowns, so because of that, it feels more direct, more to the point, more straightforward. Still very heavy, but also very melodic and melancholic at the exact same time. Now that is an important aspect, which it allows the song to have that introspective nature in the lyrics, and it allows the song to be more direct and straightforward. Now it still has great vocal choirs built into the overall orchestrations. This allows that melancholy to better come to the forefront, to better rise to the surface. Will's vocals on this track, specifically in the melodic pieces, give you chills. It's just a very haunting performance by him. I think a very personal performance by him when you judge it by the lyrical content, and it really allows this song to stand out because of all of these aspects. No breakdowns, the way the choirs hit, the melancholy that it has in it, that ballad-esque feel that the song delivers. Very unique track. I think one of the most unique songs that this album has to offer. Last but definitely not least, A Nameless Hymn. This track is super interesting because at its core it sounds like a black metal song. It has a very black metal riff, a very dark, sinister, driving, penetrating riff that brings darkness to the song, Still a Lorna Shore track with all of its heaviness, with all of its orchestral pieces. All of that is still there. It's still a very textured, very rich sounding song with a lot of elements that really make this song feel cinematic. If there's a track that truly feels cinematic at its core and uses the orchestral pieces really as movie vignettes, this song is it. It has a different magnitude, it has a different feel, it has a different vibe, but that main black metal riff was the first thing that pulled me into this song, because he immediately gives the track a completely different sound, a completely different outlook, allows it to stand out in the overall field of songs that this album delivers. I think that's an important aspect. I think it's important to have songs that stand out, that have their own uniquenesses. This is what makes the overall album feel and sound unique. This is it. Lorna Shore with I Feel the Everblack, Festering Within Me, once again out September 12th on Century Media Records. Thank you very much for listening to me, for checking out this review. Hit me up in the comment section, let me know your thoughts. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, guys.